But it was getting quickly soon after, it was like, yeah, I don't think we can do that anymore because our fans are vicious.
Let's talk about the Tool fans. They're insufferable. Tool has one of the most toxic fan bases of all time. Abysmal fan base. It's a dumpster fire. This isn't a fan base, it's a cult. And don't even get me started on this fan base. Oh my god, this fan base. I call Tool fans cancer, but at least in dealing with cancer, there's a chance you could die and be put out of your misery.
If there's one group of people I don't enjoy hanging with, it's a room full of Tool fans.
So I wanted to do a follow-up to my last video, in which I had mentioned that originally I had included a segment in which I was going to talk about when I thought other Tool fans were annoying from my own personal experience, but I decided to take it out. And I had mentioned to anyone who was watching the video whether they would like me to do a whole video dedicated to the topic of Tool fandom and where all the hate stems from. A few of you did agree to me making a video on this topic, so here it is. Like I had mentioned in my previous video, I was going to share instances in which I found other Tool fans annoying, but then I realized that I was possibly just trying to distance myself from other Tool fans, and there was something about that specifically that didn't feel quite right. And I wanted to see today if I can dissect why that is. For a long time now, it has been a big problem within the rock and metal community, where fans will criticize other fans for liking a particular band. But for what I feel has been the past 15 years or so, I feel like Tool fans have been getting a lot more hate in particular. I mean, you will find just so many memes online about this topic. And as was reflected in my last video, I feel like I ended up internalizing it. I mean, it sucks honestly that after I threw away my last Tool shirt, that I just don't want to buy another one. I don't like the fact that I just don't want to make it that obvious that I'm a Tool fan. And I was wondering, am I alone in this? And where does all this self-hatred come from? Well, after doing some digging, it turns out that it stems from a few different places. One is the behavior of fans on the internet. I feel about 15 years ago, fans were a lot more vocal about being Tool fans. And then after so many online social media posts and YouTube creators that have gone on about how insufferable Tool fans can be, I feel like we've gone into hiding a little bit. Some posts that stood out to me on Reddit from 11 years ago are ones where they liken Tool fans to vegans. How can you tell somebody is a Tool fan? Don't worry, they'll tell you. Though honestly, I don't know how true that has been for the past few years, since it's so out there now that Tool fans are hated. Also, I feel like there were a lot of music niche creators online that were bombarded with requests for them to comment on Tool or do a reaction video to a Tool song.
Early on when my channel was blowing up, there were a ton of people who wanted to know my opinions on the band Tool and a bunch of their songs. Then I started Song Suggestion Friday, and that's when my fans really wanted me to start doing Tool songs.
It is evident that Tool fans really want others to join in on what many would liken to a cult. Though I also noticed that whenever Tool fans would disagree with a creator's negative review of a Tool album or song, the creator would be disappointed that so many fans didn't agree with their take. Tool does just appear to have some devout and forgiving fans, to the chagrin of music influencers out there who feel like the fans should be a little bit more critical of whatever Tool does release. There's some gatekeeping music critics out there who feel like their opinion holds more weight and they should just agree with whatever take they have. If you look at what Metal Trench had to say about the Opiate 2 or Opiate Square single in one of his videos, you will see that a lot of people disagree with him in the comments, but I wouldn't say that they were toxic. Not for the most part, at least. Then later on in a different video, he would share that he felt that Tool fans were a little toxic and obnoxious when they disagreed with him about the Opiate 2 review.
God forbid you don't like the production choices or performance on a new song, and if you do, these galaxy brains leap into action with all sorts of either long-winded copy pastas or bottom-of-the-barrel ad hominem attacks, and once again, I have the receipts to prove it. I'm convinced that most of them don't even listen to what the critics have to say. They just see the thumbnail, maybe watch like 30 seconds to a minute of the video, which I think is being charitable, honestly, and then jump straight to the comment section to go on the defensive for their golden god. Actually, I love Tool. I've been a fan for about 20 years. I've seen them live and loved every second of it. I've bought every album. I even bought the super expensive like LCD screen version of Fear Inoculum, but I still meant everything I said about this abysmal fan base. It's a fucking dumpster fire, at least online anyways.
In all fairness, I thought that his review of the song was a little harsh.
Y'all, Opiate 2 is not good. It drops in my inbox this morning. I give it a listen, and I hate this thing. I really do. Like, this is not good. Like, let's just kind of get into it. Like, first of all, it's just basically the same song, just stretched out, especially with like this interlude portion in the middle. But more importantly, this just feels completely unnecessary. Like, this feels like a George Lucasing of Tool. Ultimately, is the vibe I get.
No one's ever really gone.
And like, I like sometimes when bands reimagine songs. I think that can have a really cool output. I think one of the best versions of that is actually another Tool song where you have the live version of Push It on Salival, which actually takes Push It, which was already a good song, and kind of takes that DNA but then sort of contorts it into something different and ultimately like makes it another interesting song. Whereas this again is just like carbon copy, but then we like cut and pasted this random thing in the middle, and also the vocal performance isn't good. Like that's that like George Lucas style where it's like, go ahead and make changes or try something new, try to reimagine something, but at least like make it something. Like make it something special. Don't just like add a bunch of CGI dinosaurs and like a dance and singing performance at Jabba's palace that nobody wanted. Like, come on, just stop. Just either make new music that you actually care about, and maybe they care about this, but I sure don't, or just stop. Like, I'm more than happy to just see a band. Like, I know some people get really upset when like Slayer says they're hanging it up, or when Dillinger Escape Plan like called it quits. To me, I'm like, good. Thank you. Like, don't tarnish your legacy.
So I visited Metal Trench's comments section on his Opiate 2 review video various times to see if I did miss what he meant when he says that it was evidence on just how toxic the Tool fan base can be. And honestly, I just don't see it. Not saying that he didn't get any mean comments at all, but I really do see mostly people saying that they disagree with him and that they like the song. There are some that actually commented that they do agree with him. So there you go. Makes you wonder who really is being pretentious in this whole thing. I mean, when you make a bold contrarian statement trying to signal that Tool has lost its way or sold out, then it should be almost expected to get some brutal pushback from some overly passionate Tool fans. Same can be said about what most people had to say about Anthony Fantano's negative review of Fear Inoculum. There were many that were disagreeing with him, and there were a few that were doing it sarcastically so, but not in an overly obnoxious and toxic way. Really, I thought Anthony Fantano would have had more of a reason than Metal Trench to go on a rant on why Tool fans are toxic. However, I don't think he ever did, or I just can't find the video where he has called out Tool fans for being toxic. I have heard more people talk about insufferable Tool fans more than I've actually met insufferable Tool fans. That's not to say that there are no obnoxious Tool fans who will be quick to point out when they think that you're wrong about an interpretation or a performance or didn't do something well enough when it comes to Tool. Sometimes it's Tool fans arguing amongst themselves online, calling each other insufferable. Remember the whole calling other Tool fans insufferable part for later. The online behavior of Tool fans would become evident early in Tool's career, on online forums and message boards, notably when A Perfect Circle first formed and perceived the project to be Maynard's abandonment of Tool. It was evident that there was almost this undercurrent of overzealous demand for new Tool music. One aspect that I've noticed some have brought up that has possibly contributed to Tool fans maybe seeming like they think they are part of a special group is the aura of mystery that Tool used to have more of in the early years. The mystery would spark lengthy discussions among Tool fans, notably on the internet. Tool's lyrics were not printed on their album liner notes, and you couldn't just easily Google them like you can today. And so fans would debate not only the meaning, but what the actual lyrics were. They didn't appear in their music videos except for their first one, and would refrain from talking about personal stuff in their interviews, sometimes being cryptic. Also, all of the mysterious puzzle pieces Tool would make up so that fans would talk about them, like the tracks Donny or Von Satan, Message to Harry Manback, all the mysterious imagery, the talk of lacrimology and the Fibonacci sequence. Fans would go deep into things like this, especially in the old Tool Army website, the Tool fan page Tool Shed, and other websites. Back then, when you found out something new in these spaces, you felt like you were in the loop than most. Nowadays, with social media, YouTube, and the changing landscape of celebrity culture, with the band members now doing so many interviews and all, this is certainly not the case anymore. Tool fans who participated in these kinds of spaces might have done a lot more gatekeeping back then, to the dismay of the more casual listener. But nowadays, like the Fibonacci thing is pretty common knowledge. Thing is, I do have somewhat of a personal gripe with some Tool fans out there on the internet. If you were to look at the history of what I've posted on this channel and on my Instagram account, you will see that I am a musician. Though most of what I have posted is original material, I have done some covers in the past, including some Tool songs. I was still working on my singing technique a few years back, and I was still refining my mixing and mastering skills when it comes to recording audio. So when I posted some Tool covers online in the past, do you think that every Tool fan was impressed with how I sounded? Do you think they all took the high road and just ignored their distaste for my performance? No. A few of them took time out of their day to tell me how horrible they thought I sounded, and quite viciously so. I had blemished the sanctity that is the relationship between them and Tool's music. I do also remember seeing on Instagram and TikTok maybe, other musicians who had gone through a similar experience where they had posted a Tool cover, but then were bombarded with mean comments from Tool fans because they didn't like their interpretation of a Tool song. So yeah, it is obvious that the relationship that the listeners have with Tool's music is quite a special one. Though I don't think that this only pertains to Tool fans. One thing that is very common amongst the rock and metal community is just how loyal fans can be to some of their favorite bands. I've gotten mean comments for doing Pink Floyd covers, for doing Nirvana covers, for doing Jimi Hendrix covers, and even thrown mean comments at for doing original music. When passions run high for something, the level of viciousness will go up a few levels. Really, even I wasn't sure about my own voice back then and really did not like listening to myself sing. Whenever Tool fans feel like you didn't do something justice, they're gonna be a little bit more unhinged about it on the internet. Remember that people in general will use the internet to say things that they normally wouldn't say to people in real life. It really does seem to me that the haters talk more about Tool and their fans more than actual Tool fans do. Really, a lot of this toxic labeling that has been thrown at Tool fans just reeks of the same metal elitism that has been so omnipresent in the culture for so long now.
Tool. Oh, sorry. Progressive Nickelback. Oh, I have been waiting to dunk on you guys ever since I started this series. Your music is what stupid people think smart music sounds like. You are just butt rock with longer, more tedious songs. Let's take your biggest hit, for example, Schism. This is a Puddle of Mud song on acid. And I'm just gonna pretend I don't hear you guys ripping off Iron Maiden's Judas Be My Guide here. Your albums are metal's equivalent to Paul Thomas Anderson movies. Overlong, overdramatic, pretentious, try-hard, void of any substance whatsoever, boring, tedious trash. And don't even get me started on this fan base. Oh my god, this fucking fan base. If you looked up Big Brain in the dictionary, you'd find Tool fans. There is no difference between Tool fans and mega heads in terms of how emotionally fragile and defensive they get when someone on the internet dares to be insulting of their gods. Trenchant was right about them.
This isn't a fan base, it's a cult.
I'd call Tool fans cancer, but at least in dealing with cancer, there's a chance you could die and be put out of your misery.
The problem is that most Tool fans don't know how to recognize it because Tool is not much of a metal band. Therefore, will attract more than just a hardcore metalhead listener. I know I'm rattling some feathers by saying that, and it's a whole debate on its own, but just keep watching.
I mean, when people call us metal, I kind of go, I feel like taking a bath, because to me metal is kind of embarrassing, and
You mean
the whole, you know, metal attitude and the, you know, all these guys dressing like pirates and, you know, and now those same, you know, pirates on Hollywood Boulevard are wearing flannels to be metal, grunge, you know. So I tried staying away from that. I mean, I like the Seattle bands. I like them a lot, and but I like country music, and I like Led Zeppelin and AC/DC, you know, music like that, and classical music.
What can be argued is that Tool is really its own thing. Those that are inclined to be more of a mainstream pop music listener are never going to develop the affinity towards Tool's music. And really because to them, Tool might as well be Cannibal Corpse, Slayer, or any much heavier metal band. For the normies, all hard rock and heavy metal pretty much sounds like shit, including Tool. Who can forget Tool knocking Taylor Swift off of the #1 spot, and all the Swifties losing their mind? And then you have your actual metalheads. And with them, it's a little bit harder to break down why a lot of them don't like Tool. To them, Tool can just be a little too underwhelming.
Today we're going to be listening to Tool until I get bored. Okay, let's do this.
One thing that I think is expressed often by metalheads out there is that they can't stand that a band like Tool has so much success and fan love, even though they are not seen as skilled musicians and virtuosos as a lot of other heavy metal musicians out there. And Tool's sound is overall not that brutal when compared to your typical heavy metal or metalcore band. Maynard never does growling type of vocals. It's mostly clean melodic singing with occasional shouting and screaming, but harsh vocals were never dominant in Tool's music. Danny Carey doesn't play too many double kick parts, and Tool never really does play blast beats, though there are many intricate and complex drum patterns that Danny has come up with. The low amount of crazy fast and erratic drum fills might not meet the metal criteria for some. I honestly feel like I've heard many metalheads say that they don't understand why Danny Carey gets so much praise as a drummer. Often it boils down to that he's just not that loud or fast enough. I've often heard from those that are more critical of him that he plays a lot with his toms and not enough with his cymbals, which is bullshit really. Adam Jones is typically not seen as a virtuoso guitar player, which is a staple amongst metal guitarists. Most of his riffs are largely focused on creating a steady groove. Though heavy and often in odd time signatures, it's just not that difficult to play, nor aggressive and harsh sounding for most metalheads. And Adam just doesn't play super fast shredding guitar solos, and most of his lead playing is pretty easy to play, technique-wise. The same points that I just made about Adam's guitar playing can also apply to bassist Justin Chancellor. One thing that I would like to argue is that Justin Chancellor's bass playing is probably the most defining trait of Tool's sound. When you hear Justin playing some high notes in a weird rhythmic pattern with some delay or reverb or some other effect, you know it's a Tool song. But yet, that defining melodic, spacey, and at times melancholic tone is just not a common type of sound in metal. What you will commonly hear from Tool fans is that listening to Tool's music is its own kind of experience, which I would argue that is true. Which I hear is something that non-Tool fans are really tired of hearing. Though I feel that this is something that is told to somebody who just said that Tool is boring for them. But in a lot of ways, it is true. Most Tool songs are not loud initially. You almost do have to be prepared to go on a journey that usually takes some time to build up an energy. You kinda do have to have a certain type of attention span in order to be intrigued by Tool and have their songs have the intended impact on you. The common "Tool is just too boring" is a critique that is understandable if what you want from music is something that gets to the point quick because you want to feel a certain emotion already. But if you don't like the experience of listening to Tool, then that's okay. I honestly haven't met many Tool fans in real life who have tried to belittle somebody else for not liking Tool. A common critique that I hear is that Tool gets a lot of praise for being considered a really technical progressive metal band, when in reality, they are not as skilled musicians and complex writers as metal bands like Meshuggah, Dream Theater, Mastodon, or Dillinger Escape Plan. Or, name some other metal band that you think is way more skilled and way more complex writers than Tool. which much of that argument I would agree with, though it doesn't mean that Tool ever tried to mold their sound intentionally to appeal to a mainstream audience. They do have a more mainstream appeal than those other bands I just mentioned, but it has always seemed that Tool stays true to their own artistic instincts and have created their own unique sound. It is this perceived artistic integrity that fans appreciate so much about Tool, and really, people will just like what they like. And the most virtuoso musicians don't always write the music with the most broad appeal. It's weird to think that Tool is not complex enough for a lot of metalheads. I mean, I'm not trying to compare Tool to Beethoven, Mozart, or Bach or anything like that, but when you take into account the fact that most top 40 hits for the past few decades are made up of some of the most simple chords that are used over and over again, I mean, how elitist can you really be? As I had mentioned in my previous video on Maynard James Keenan, there has been a lot of talk surrounding whether Maynard hates his own fans, which has really fed this whole Tool fans are insufferable narrative. Much of that stemming from Maynard writing the song Hooker with a Penis, also Maynard's decision to move further back on the stage when performing in concerts, and Maynard trolling fans for expressing their frustration at the long gaps in between releasing some of their albums. I had covered in my last video a couple of times in which Maynard had called Tool fans difficult.
You know, I can't imagine, what the Tool army looks like and what it has evolved into. I can't imagine what type of grown-ups you helped create.
You know that post you always see, that's like the Neanderthal guy kind of finally he stands upright?
Yeah, that should be just says Tool fan at the end or somewhere in the middle.
Yeah, you got to cut it off somewhere right in the middle before it gets to the end. I'm just kidding, guys. Don't get all angry.
Oh, fuck. All right, so you're doing something.
He hates Tool. Shut up.
Yeah,
I don't hate you.
They can't. You can't win really.
No.
Because you can only do what you've done once on some level, and eventually, if you try to change it all, you're gonna have a fucking bunch of people going, "No, he's not. That's not the guy he used to be."
Yeah, because he's not 49 or anything.
Yeah, really.
One noteworthy occurrence of Tool fans possibly coming across as the perfect example of being insufferable is when a couple of fans got into an argument with Maynard himself on Instagram over the reason why Tool's music was not available on streaming platforms. This was back in 2018 when Tool didn't have their music on streaming platforms yet, and also when Maynard still used the Pussifer account a lot more like his personal account, and the fans didn't know that they were talking to Maynard himself. Apparently they thought they knew more facts about the inner workings of the band than the singer himself, or didn't know what Pussifer was. I think it's dealing with misinformed fans like this that contributes to Maynard's complicated relationship with the fans. But also in 2019, Maynard would share that he would get death threats for not releasing new Tool music in a long time. So yeah, I guess Tool's music arises a lot of intense, passionate emotions that are borderline lunacy.
Recently, people have asked me, Maynard, James Keenan, what's up with the fucking riot gear? Well, I'll tell you, I'm afraid of bananas and other forms of fruit, because eventually, you wonderful people are gonna run out of fucking patience. So I beg you, Danny, Adam, and Justin, please finish your parts so I can finish mine. Take this fucking riot gear off. Because of the fucking bananas, man.
Where Tool fans might start hating on other Tool fans is because of concert experiences. Which is the case with me really, and some of the experiences I was thinking of sharing in my last video. When I saw Tool at Aftershock Festival, there was fans throwing stuff at a girl who was closer to the stage, who was sitting on top of someone else's shoulders, and they were doing that so that she could get down. I don't know what some of y'all might think of that. I remember at the same festival, a lot of people were squishing each other because there were many that were trying to get closer to the stage. I pretty much got lifted off of the ground because of the whole crowd smushing each other. When this happened, I lost my shoe, and when I finally was able to recover it, I tried to move back a few feet where the crowd was a little bit less smushed into each other, but there was one girl who was aggressively trying to block my path. And I don't know what the problem was. I was trying to move further back from the stage, and I just needed to put my shoe on. What's apparent at Tool shows is just how passionate and overly enthusiastic the fans can be. Though this is only the case whenever Tool plays a general admission standing show. Most of their shows lately have been seated venues, so there's that. This sort of behavior at concerts is, I think, what also contributed to Maynard's feelings towards his own fans.
Bill and I trying to go, how do we take your bit on the road and have you open? Tool does some songs, you do some more stuff, Tool does more songs. And it would kind of be like that kind of format. And we were right at the level where we could probably do that. But it was getting quickly soon after was like, yeah, I don't think we can do that anymore because our fans are f***ing vicious. Like, we actually had a whole bit where we did a show where we had Greg Barrett and David Cross were sports announcers, and they started the whole show as if it was halftime, getting a play-by-play and how, Maynard's on his game tonight, like a full, stats.
They were like out on stage?
Yeah, they're out front doing the stage thing, like with the whole jackets and everything, doing a whole almost halftime commentary, although it's the show hasn't even started. And it's David Cross and Greg Barrett, and they're getting pelted with quarters. And time after that, Tenacious D opened for us and got booed off the stage.
Jack Black would comment himself in 2023 about opening for Tool, saying, I didn't feel like we weren't ready for primetime. I just felt like, oh, this is what happens when we don't go to the right audience. We know Tool. Tool's great, but that crowd, they came for Tool. Or you better be a lot like Tool. We were a lot softer than Tool. We came out playing Jesus Ranch, and they were like, what?
It was a big day on Jesus Ranch.
I wonder if Tenacious D and those comedians would open up for Tool again after gaining some success of their own, and if the audience would react the same way towards them. I do remember the first time that I ever saw Tool was at what was then known as the Nokia Theater in Los Angeles in 2010, and they had an opening act named Dialect. Most of the audience had not gotten there yet, and so Dialect played to a mostly empty theater. I remember that Tool had played a show at the same theater the previous night, and so I think a lot of fans online had spread the word of who was opening, and so a lot of people in attendance the second night decided to sit out the opening act. I will say that it was an interesting choice for an opening act for Tool, and I will be honest and say that it wasn't exactly my cup of tea at the time. Though, as I was making this video, I did decide to give their music a shot, and it's pretty good. Some sort of industrial hip-hop act. It's really evident that Tool fans expect a certain type of experience when they go to a Tool show, but they have had some interesting choices when it comes to openers at times. And I think Tool overestimates just how open-minded all of their fans will be at their concerts. What do you guys think about this? Did you ever go to a Tool show and weren't too sure what to make of their opening act? Do you actually remember the opening act getting booed off the stage when you saw Tool? Anyone ever remember getting a feeling of mob mentality when going to a Tool concert? To be fair, the most hostile crowd I was ever a part of was at a Misfits show. I remember the crowd viciously jeering one of the opening acts with a lot of middle fingers in the air. It honestly made me be not too sure about the punk rock crowd for a while there, though I was honestly already thinking that before and still kind of do to this day. I also remember aggressive audience members when seeing Marilyn Manson, Deftones, Nine Inch Nails, so I don't think this aggressive over-enthusiasm only pertains to Tool fans. I have also heard some really bizarre stories of people who have seen Slayer, Pantera, or some other really hardcore type of band out there in concert. Though more recently there has been a lot of discussion surrounding their usage of phones at Tool's shows and how strict the rules can be enforced when you go to a Tool concert. I saw Tool in concert in Los Angeles in February 2024 when this happened.
Put your
fucking phone away, dickhead. Seriously.
I feel like Tool fans will differ about this topic and whether they feel like Tool is being a little pretentious and their absolutely no phones policy. Though tell me what you guys think about this topic in the comments. Outside of the concert sphere, I do remember that I had a friend who didn't listen to Tool, but he did have a roommate who was a big Tool fan. And I honestly didn't like this roommate of his. He was the kind of guy who thought his heroin addiction actually made him cooler. He was also a coworker of mine who got fired because he went around bragging about girl in the conference room. He was the kind of guy that always gave off sleazy vibes. However, I had a couple of friends who I had met through a roommate of mine who I went to a couple of Tool shows with, and they were some of the chillest people I had ever met. I was also in a band where we played a lot of Tool covers, and those were some chill dudes also. And really, most of the Tool fans that I have met in real life are some pretty chill people. There has always been a few who have compared Tool's fan base to that of a cult, with much of Tool's music being centered around just simply feeling spiritual.
Aside from the occasional holier-than-thou frat boy who just took his first acid trip, Tool's community is surprisingly positive. A lot of Tool fans tend to be introspective, empathetic, and intellectually curious. And it's no coincidence either, because Tool's music speaks profoundly to those sensibilities. And as open-minded and individualistic as Tool fans can be, the band and their supporters sometimes do give off a bit of a cultish vibe, right? After all, more than a few famous cults were based in sonic mantras, meditation, and psychedelics. Plenty of artists have relentlessly dedicated fans, but you never really hear Beliebers talk about how Justin Bieber's Baby became the moral and spiritual compass of their life's path. There's just something different about Tool, and it's deeply rooted in spirituality.
Some have pointed out just how much Tool fans can be, well, tools, because of the overpriced merchandise that some are willing to pay for. And you even see merchandise being resold for ridiculous prices at sites like eBay. I have never paid so much money for things like that, but I also don't want to bash the kind of person that does spend that kind of money for those sorts of things, because, you know, to each their own. I had a bandmate once that paid the high price for the VIP experience of seeing Tool do their sound check, and I'm not sure what else. Hey, he had the money to spare, and that's just how some people want to show their appreciation for the band. So this is the part of the video where I'm going to talk about a recent event that embodies this whole topic. The Live in the Sand Festival in Punta Cana in the Dominican Republic happened while I was about more than halfway filming the main portion of this video. I was pretty much done writing what I thought was going to be the whole script, but this event was too relevant to this topic for me not to include it in this video. Hence a big reason, among other things, why it extended the length of this project and why it's been about 6 months since my last video essay. It seems that festival attendees who went to the Tool Live in the Sand Festival who paid in the ranges of 4 to 10k were disappointed on what Tool had to offer on the second night of the festival. Tool played 10 songs on the first night, and it seems like things went swell and fans were enthusiastic for the second night of Tool playing. On the second night, however, 4 out of the 9 songs were repeats from the previous night, with 3 songs even being played in the same order. And it seems like the show was cut a little short. There would be footage posted online in which you can hear crowd members booing and even see some middle fingers in the air. Then there was a photo posted of a sign that said "Fuck MJK" off of somebody's hotel balcony. Apparently, festival attendees thought that they were going to get 2 very different set lists on each night, with no repeats, but a segment of the crowd were extremely disappointed when about half the set was the same from the previous night. Since the festival, there have been many who have gone online and trolled the band. Some have expressed that this is a continued sign of how Tool does not care about its fans, and feel like Tool ripped off festival attendees and really did fans bad this time. There was one festival attendee who is a lawyer who calls himself a huge Tool fan and has advertised a potential class action lawsuit for potential breach of contract and misrepresentation. The major thing that has been pointed out is that there was wording in some of the programming that promised 2 unique sets, which is being argued that implied that Tool would not play repeats on those 2 sets. The online discussions that have sprung about following this are a prime example of how Tool fans can behave online. There are those that are pissed off that this is what Tool had to offer to fans that paid thousands of dollars and feel like this shows that Tool has sold out, and are the ones that are brutally trolling the band online. Then there are those who are mostly defending Tool and don't really feel much sympathy for those that attended the festival and are now complaining. They feel that festival attendees should appreciate what Tool had to offer them, along with everything else that came with the festival. And of course, you have your Tool haters who are rejoicing in the moment and are taking the time to say that Tool is overrated and the fans suck. Yay, glad you guys are still here, wanting to be heard. Though there has been a lot more talk recently than in the past about bands not being as profitable as much as normal people would think, and the crazy logistics when it comes to touring. Also, with so many lawsuits that Tool has had to deal with over the years, it's not difficult to believe that Tool has a lot of fees to pay up. Hence a possibility of why Tool has seemed like a bit of a cash grab for the past few years. And with these guys now in their 60s, they might be feeling the pressure to quickly build up their retirement fund. At least 3 out of the 4. But that's just speculation. I mean, when you take into account the fact that fans have kept paying these astronomical prices for merchandise throughout the years, you can see why Tool agreed to put on a festival like this. Because they know they have fans that are willing to pay for that. Really, when I saw advertisement for this festival, I started getting a little worried. With something like the Fire Festival still fresh in a lot of people's minds and all, like thousands of dollars to go to an exclusive festival in the Dominican Republic, promising 2 unique sets from a band some fans think mistakenly so, are all about standing up against greed or the man. Like, what can go wrong?
This song is all about the cool merchandise we have for sale.
Look, if you have the disposable income to spare and you want to show support for your favorite musicians so that they can keep making the music that you like to listen to, then to each their own. Also, you can listen to and enjoy the music as much as you want without having to buy any merch. No one is forcing you to. It's not like it's a requirement for you to show loyalty towards the band. So obviously, Tool fans are an overly enthusiastic crowd, which is annoying to anyone who doesn't get the music. But to that, I have to say, isn't that the case with any fandom? Like, let's go looking for those tier ranking list videos of the most appreciated fan bases out there. I feel that it is a really common phenomenon where one might have a friend with similar music tastes, and then you discover a new artist and get excited to share this new artist with your friend, only to be disappointed that your friend does not have the same reaction to this new discovery of yours. I feel like this has been a common thing with Tool fans and some of their friends. I remember I had a couple of good friends in high school, and when I first met them, we shared common interests in a lot of rock bands, like Led Zeppelin, Black Sabbath, Jimi Hendrix, Nirvana, Queens of the Stone Age, The Doors, Pink Floyd, Iron Maiden, Metallica, bands like that. And me thinking since they were into those bands, then surely they would share in my enthusiasm in discovering Tool. Well, they didn't. And though I like to think that I wasn't that insistent, I'm pretty sure if you were to ask my friends from that time, they probably wouldn't say the same. I probably did play for them several Tool songs with the hope that at least one would vibe with them. I probably did go on talking about the odd time signatures that would change throughout the song, the cool polyrhythms, and maybe even though I really don't think so, chromosomes developing your third eye, the Fibonacci sequence, and none of that made them give a shit about Tool. I experienced something that I thought was so unique and impactful, but others that were close to me did not see the same value, so it was obviously a letdown. It still confuses me a bit that a friend of mine who likes Pink Floyd, likes Nirvana, likes Metallica, and I believe also likes Alice in Chains, but just does not like Tool at all. I remember hearing from my friends that Tool was just a little too boring and that all the songs sound the same. But really, for most musical acts that I don't like, most of their songs will sound the same to me, and I eventually end up getting bored. Most of Slayer sounds the same to me. And there are people in other fandoms who can be equally as annoying. I don't want to go on bashing other specific fandoms. I feel like there are other content creators on this platform who have done enough of that already. And let's keep in mind that this obsessive fandom doesn't only pertain to music. There are TV series, movies, books, video games, politicians that will inspire fandoms that seem crazy to those that are not a part of it. One common thing that I noticed when I would see those worst fandom tier ranking list videos is that the bands that are more likely to have fans that obsess not just over the music, but also the backstory and the lore of the bands, are the fans that are more likely to be labeled as toxic and insufferable. It's understandable that when somebody doesn't jive with the music, then they're not going to give a single f*** about the backstory and lore of the band. So when they hear a superfan go on and on about it, it can be a really annoying experience. Really, the most you will hear about insufferable Tool fans are from the Tool haters who make the same Fibonacci joke every 2 seconds. Look, I'm also a big fan of Nirvana and Pink Floyd, and I can tell you I was probably a lot more insufferable trying to talk about those two bands than I have been with Tool. And if you go back and watch some of those fandom tier ranking list videos, you will notice that Tool fans actually don't do that bad.
This might surprise people. I'm just speaking from my own personal experience here. Limp Bizkit fans have been worse to me than Tool fans. Tool fans, kind of like Dance Gavin Dance fans, definitely nerds, definitely over-enthusiastic, but they have never been like nasty to me. They've never been like so thin-skinned and butthurt. They really want me to like Tool, but even Tool fans can kind of laugh at Tool fans. Like, I actually think that they're more self-aware than Limp Bizkit fans. I know it's going to be it's an upset. It's a surprise upset in the quarterfinals. Limp Bizkit fans knocking Tool fans out of the bracket early. I know it's going to be a surprise.
Tool fans, I'll give them a B tier. There's a lot of talk about the Tool fandom being very toxic. From my experience, they have been mostly chill even when I critiqued Tool. There was very little toxicity in my video where I just absolutely dissected the band and said what I liked about it, what I didn't like about it. Granted, I didn't outright say I hate Tool, so that might have been the title just for clickbaity type of shit. But unlike a bunch of the other fan bases below them on this tier list, there were a ton of Tool fans in the comments being like, yeah, there's a segment of our fandom that is so fucking cringy and I can't stand them. Their own fans were like, yeah, there's some of us that really suck. That level of self-awareness I find so refreshing. And I found most Tool fans in real life that I've interacted with to be super cool. So that's why they don't go lower. Because, like, man, there is a segment of them, but even other Tool fans are like, they fucking suck.
Next band, Tool. Here's the thing. I'm going to look right at the camera. Without even looking at the chat, I can already tell you people are probably saying A or S, like for the most part. And you guys might be surprised with what I'm going to say here, but I don't think Tool fans are as bad as the rap that they have. And like everybody knows at this point, like the meme is like Tool fans are just so annoying about the band. But in my everyday regular casual life, I've never encountered anybody that's like gone out of their way to just be like, oh, Tool, ah, you know what I mean? Like, I think it's more of a meme. I think Tool fans being annoying is more of an actual meme than Tool fans are actually annoying. Now, don't get me wrong. I've encountered the people online that like gush all over them because they're like, oh, did you know that they write music mathematically and with the fucking, what is the Fibonacci sequence or whatever that is? And that's nerdy shit. Like a lot of prog people do that. But chat, what do you guys think after hearing that? Like, honestly, we're getting a lot of B's in here. My gut on this one, I'm being 100% honest, is to actually give Tool fans like a C, but a lot of you guys are thinking B. I'll give you guys some weight. Let's put Tool at B, even though I would have said C personally. I really do think it's more of a meme than anything at this point, and it's their fans really aren't as annoying as people say they are.
Apparently, a lot of Tool fans are really self-aware that they really just want you to like Tool's music, but that some can be assholes with their passion. But really, I have a problem with this whole I love Tool, but I hate their fans statement that is thrown around a lot. Like on Reddit and YouTube, you will find a lot of these types of comments. It honestly feels like exposing some sort of cognitive bias in a way. And really what I noticed whenever there are discussions online on the topic of why Tool fans are hated is that there are a lot of Tool fans who are quick to comment something along the lines of, I love Tool, but I hate the fans.
So I swallow no pride at all putting me and other Tool fans alike in the tippy top of the crazy music fan base tier list.
I feel like there's this underlying thing when someone says that they love Tool but hate the fans. Like they know there's this whole rumor of Maynard hating Tool fans. And so they're saying this sort of because they want to be seen favorably in Maynard's eyes in case they ever meet him. Or they simply don't want to make the person they are talking to uncomfortable by saying that they're Tool fans because of the stigma surrounding it. It reminds me of how I also feel when I hear a Nirvana fan say that they like every song except for Smells Like Teen Spirit. Like, you know, Nirvana stopped playing it live because it was the only song that a lot of airhead mainstream jocks knew that were showing up to their shows. And so you want to be seen as one of the true hardcore fans that actually gets it. It's trying to be contrarian, though it shows just how much of a dick rider you really are, or it reveals this arrogant point of view. It really is true that no Tool fan thinks that they're one of the bad ones.
Every Tool fan thinks they're not one of the bad ones.
Yeah, that's true.
There are two kinds of Tool fan. A shitty Tool fan.
Yep.
And then a shitty Tool fan who thinks they're not a shitty Tool fan.
Yeah.
Because everyone else shuts the fuck up. Even if it's a guilty pleasure, you do legit enjoy listening to this band, you know not to fucking talk about it, because everyone's gonna think you're one of these meth-smoking rednecks driving around with a Tool sticker on their fucked up pickup truck.
Yeah. Kind of like Dave Matthews Band.
Well, minus the meth head rednecks.
I know I'll probably never shed the label of Maynard Dick Rider after doing a 53-minute video on the guy, but it doesn't feel like I'm painting myself in a more favorable manner by bashing the entire fan base, because it further reinforces making me look like an arrogant, pretentious douchebag. Pretty much, in other words, whenever a Tool fan talks bad about other Tool fans while insinuating that they're not one of the bad ones, it gives off pick-me energy. I feel that everyone should be able to openly enjoy whatever music that they prefer without feeling shame over it. The kind of person who says something like, oh, when I see someone wearing a Tool shirt, I try to avoid them, is that the kind of person you want to meet anyways? I know with more recent events, it's harder to say this, but I think Tool listeners should be less afraid of the fan label and just admit that it has its shittier aspects, but that you don't participate in it. Unless you do, then in that case you need to chill the fuck out. I mean, it's a rock band made up of human beings, for fuck's sake. The biggest takeaway that I got from all of this is that with Tool being such a successful, multi-platinum selling band, it's going to attract many types of people, and Tool's music generates a lot of passion in all of those types, that the likelihood of you meeting one that you don't like is pretty high. Has anyone considered that possibly annoying assholes can listen to any band? Tool has some mainstream appeal, So it's going to attract some insufferable assholes who have a propensity for delusion and thinking that they are really intelligent for listening to a certain type of music. If you know an insufferable Tool fan in your life, then remember, there might be another person that you know who is also insufferable, but is not a Tool fan, and you might just be singling a group out. Not to mention that saying that you avoid Tool fans reveals a sort of prejudice. Like, not every black metal fan has burned down a church. Really, the biggest assholes that I've ever met didn't even listen to rock or metal. They were the kind of person that I wasn't sure even liked music at all. Or rap. So to wrap things up, Tool's music just has so much to unpack that the amount of talking points that fans can obsess over can be just too much for non-Tool fans. If you just don't jive with the music, then you're simply not going to give a single f*** about the rest. And like I pointed out in my previous video, Maynard has admitted at times that a lot of this serious obsession is his own fault.
Look, I'm a member of the community, but I've had some humorless discussions about the Fibonacci sequence with Tool fans. All due respect, glad you're all here, I'm a part of you. Did you ever want to find some people with a bit more of a sense of humor? I mean, not that I am a Tool fan, but you know what I'm saying.
Well, the thing is, most of those tracks, there's humor sewn into many of them. Of course. People just right over their heads, so they're so busy counting. God bless them. I guess it's my own fault, really. If you put down too many puzzles, that people they go full Tooling.
I mean, yeah, Maynard, that is what happens when you make such awesome music and make up other stuff for us to unpack. And I know there's a lot of talk nowadays about celebrity culture deservedly dying and whether fandom is even a good thing. To that, I will have to say that you have to monitor yourself with how far you take it and not make fandom your end-all be-all for experiencing something profound, and not have that be the only thing to which you model your personality after. But it's honestly almost an entirely big topic for another day. So I hope you all realize that a lot of this hatred towards Tool fans comes from the internet, where there's never been a shortage of toxic behavior that you normally wouldn't encounter in real life. Remember when you go to a Tool show that you are surrounded by very enthusiastic fans, so be prepared to encounter behavior that doesn't exactly exude the most peaceful and controlled vibes, though sometimes it does. Whenever you encounter somebody who wants to trash Tool's music, remember that everyone has their own unique tastes, and you shouldn't let someone else's opinion easily tarnish something that has a positive effect on you. Remember that Tool has such a unique sound that it's really its own thing, hence a big reason why the fandom can seem to be singled out so much. So you have to learn how to recognize elitism and not let that devalue what you like. Recognize that Tool is a for-profit band that looks for different ways to make money. So if you like their art, it is up to you how much money you want to spend in showing support for the band. Remember to own the label of Tool fan because you really shouldn't be ashamed of it. And if you call other Tool fans insufferable, you're probably one of the bad ones. Always keep in mind how diverse and potentially divisive this fan base can be. What I would hate to see the Tool fandom turn into is something similar to Nickelback or Dave Matthews fans, where a lot of the fans are embarrassed to make it obvious that they're fans of the band. It would be a shame if this ever started happening to Tool fans, though I feel like there's voices out there who say that it's already like that. I mean, in this age of loneliness, it sucks to feel that there is another thing less that I can bond over with others. To me, Tool will always be a great band that is so much about self-discovery and self-healing that it would be a shame for their legacy to be tarnished for being known to have such a negative fan base. When in reality, what truly is prominent amongst the fans is a fiery passion, and passion has never been easy to tame. Thank you guys so much if you made it this far into the video. I'm new to this, and this style of video takes a lot of time and effort, so if you've recently subscribed to me, thank you so much, and I hope you're patient with my uploads. My last video turned out to be a bit more successful than I thought it would be. So I am very grateful for anyone who showed support for that video and subscribing, leaving a like, leaving a comment. Thank you so much. My next video won't be about Tool, but I am going to continue to ride Maynard's. Hey guys, I wanted to add this last little clip here at the end to again say thank you. I do want to state that I do intend to do more frequent uploads, but with the way things are now, it's hard to put in the amount of time that this type of content requires. I still need to have a day job, but the hope is that one day I will be able to do more of this. So if you want to show support for this channel, leave a like, leave a comment, and or subscribe. And if you guys know anyone who needs a video editor, I am more than willing to work with other content creators out there for the right negotiated price. So one last time, thank you guys so much, and I'll catch you guys next time.